It's great to see you. Thanks for being here. We've all been there, haven't we? You're driving down the road with your loved one, fast. I need directions really quick. Left, right, straight. Left, left. There's a cliff. Oh, I mean right. Oh, the other left, as you roll your eyes. How can it be so difficult? Left to right. As it turns out, there's a lot of neurological networking that takes place. It's more difficult than you think. Up and down isn't that hard, unless you go to this museum just 2 blocks away, the Museum of Illusions. Or you go to outer space. And these astronauts, they have some serious, not only left-right confusion, but up and down confusion. But left-right should be simpler, but it isn't. Actually, one of the many things that our brain does differently is that it has a lateralization of functioning, handedness being an obvious one. How many of you are right-handed? Wow. I love when a right-handed person puts up their left-handed hand. We get some more coffee. And how many of you are left-handed? There you go. It always works. It's 1 to 10. Over the entire world, there is 10 to 12% left-handers. Why? Well, it's good to have diversity in a band. It's good to have diversity in an HR department. It's good to have biological diversity. There must be a reason. So the way this all works is, as you know, the right hemisphere is much more involved in the control of the left hand, and the left hemisphere is managing the right hand. Okay. If you ask countries, like what's your percentage of right and left-handers? It's interesting, the more permissive countries, also countries that rank high on happiness scale, like Netherlands number 5, United States number 18, Canada number 4, they give you the numbers that we think are correct, 12%. 12% are left-handers. But there are more restrictive countries like China. They report 3.5%. They're left-handers. We think it's actually still 10 to 12%. Why is that happening? Well, we're not the only species where righties outnumber lefties. 75% of gorillas are right-handed. Hold on, 66% of orangutans are left-handed. How do we know this? Well, we have the bimanual tube task. This is what we do on our free time in universities. We put food into a tube, then we give it to a human, or in this case, Barbara, the female orangutan, and she uses her dominant hand to fetch the food out. So she's left-handed. Any more food? Lobsters are 50-50. Okay? You know, God doesn't play dice with the universe, but what's going on here? So this lobster on the left side, he's right-handed. It's the crusher claw which makes them right-handed. You know, the one with the good meat in it, the one you go first with? You know, hey, can I have one of the claws? You take the crusher claw. The crusher claw is the larger claw. It crushes. The smaller claw is known as the scissors, where you can catch little fish and chew up food. But here on the other side, the right side, we have a female lobster who is left-handed. Okay? It's 50-50 in the world of lobsters. Now, in this country, and also in Europe and other countries, there has been a right-hand bias. Just try, as a left-hander or as a right-hander, use a left-handed scissor and see if you can cut paper. Tonight, when you get ready for bed and you brush your teeth with your non-dominant hand. See how that works? Okay? So there's a right-handed bias here in America. We live in a right-handed world. There's the right answer, being righteous. In Germany, the word Recht means justice. There's the right of way. And actually, when you go shopping, people favor things on the right side. Okay? Conversely, there is a left-handed bias. The word left in Latin means sinister. In Germany, links means underhanded, sneaky. And then there's the left-handed complement, or like, you're kind of like out in left field. Even the word ambidextrous is biased. It really means being right-handed on both sides. It's my mom. She was born in 1923 in Vienna. So when she went to school as a natural left-hander, they made her write on her right side. She resented it all her life, but she was rebellious, so I think she started writing her dissertation on a typewriter where she can use both hands. Interestingly enough, she did her dissertation in mathematics and physics on electricity, okay, just like Nikola Tesla, a left-hander. And electricity is very abstract, and it would make sense, it's more of a right hemisphere function, that maybe you're left-handed. See, if you're a left-hander, maybe it's a good thing, because you have to constantly adjust, adapt, overcome problems. And as Malcolm Gladwell would say, this might be the disadvantage, it's to your advantage. Or like Friedrich Nietzsche said, hey, if it doesn't kill you, it makes you stronger. So left-handers maybe have a built-in adaptability. So we now celebrate left-handers. There's many famous ones we all know. One of the famous ones is Ben Franklin. Or was he really left-handed? Well, the Washington Post said he is. That's good enough for me. He was in a movie, sort of a comedy, 1776. He was played left-handed. He signed, apparently, the Declaration of Independence with his left hand. How interesting. And then he wrote this famous essay, Petition of the Left Hand, a whimsical, funny, abstract ode from the left hand to the right hand. Only a left-hander could write that. But I would also say his brain sounds cross-wired. He's a writer, but he also works in sort of like nonlinear, nonverbal domains, politics, electricity. He's an inventor. Well, I thought if any group knew whether he was left-handed, it would be this group. So during Q&A, we'll come back to that, okay? I have three passions. One of my big passions is the complexity of neuroscience. It's a textbook I wrote. I also love the creativity of sports. And then my last passion is the mystery of music. So I was going to use my passion for sports and music to demonstrate to you the complexities of handedness. Let's start with sports. In sports, it is absolutely, positively an advantage to be left-handed. So if you're left-handed, you're more likely to be a professional football player. Okay? And here's a lefty, that's Sammy Givens, he's on our Drexel basketball team, and he shoots left-handed. And in college, specifically in college, it always works. You see this Princeton defender, he's guarding his right hand. No contest. It always works. It's lethal to be a left-hander, especially in high school or in college. Why? Well, the first part is the 90% right-handers, they're unfamiliar competing, guarding left-handers. Okay? There might be another reason, though. So also there, it's harder to prepare. This is a sport I love. It's fast. It's a celebration of geometry, squash. I was lucky enough to host, or as Drexel athletic director, to host the 10 times the US Open at our facility, which now moved to the wonderful Arlen Specter National Center. It's fast. There's a lot of angles involved. You play off the walls. A left-hander must have an advantage. This is Amanda Sobey. She's our #1 player in the United States. I had the honor of working with her for 2 years as her sports psychologist. Together, she was able to get to #3 in the world. At Harvard, where she graduated from in anthropology, she was 57-0. Okay, 57 wins, 0 losses. Not only is she a great squash player, she's also left-handed. It's an advantage. Now at the pros, it's a little different, because every shot at the pros is, of course, very, very good, no matter forehand or backhand. So I'm thinking there should be a lot of left-handers in the sport of squash. But there's only 8%, less than average. I call up my friend Paul Asante, the winningest coach of squash at Trinity, 10 national championships. He says, that's an easy question, Eric. They start him early to give lessons, and the coach will switch him from left to right. What a mistake. Remember Jeff Goldblum in the movie Jurassic Park? Life finds a way. Okay. Nadal is interesting. He's left-handed, but in life, he's right-handed. What's going on? And this guy, Phil Mickelson, we know him as lefty, but in life, he's right-handed. Okay. This we call cross-laterality. I, for example, play tennis right-handed, but ice hockey left-handed. So something's being wired differently. And it's used as a term to differentiate individuals who have different dominance among arms, hands, or foot, eye. I think it's better not to talk about preference when it comes to handedness, but proficiency. You can, for example, measure it. All those right-handers, some of you are more right-handed than others. The prevalence of cross-laterality is a mystery. I think it's 20 to 30%. I think many of you are cross-lateral because it has a distinct advantage for being creative, for not being a one-trick pony. And in sports, sometimes you got to go right, sometimes you got to go left. If you can only go right, well, that's not good. So I'm not surprised that these athletes have a cross-laterality. Here's a revenge of my mom, who was forced to write right-handed. She now became a tennis player, so she had two forehands. Okay. Now, Nadal is left-handed, but he's really right-handed, so when he has a killer backhand, if you're a tennis fan. It's really with his right hand, right? So it's his dominant hand. So my mother also was an Olympic figure skater, and she learned how to spin both right way and the left way. An artistic, technical, and competitive advantage. Handedness is, to some extent, biological, of course, some extent genetical. Even though identical twins, if one's a left-hander, only 70% of the other one is a left-hander. So there's still a lot of mystery about handedness. But certainly my sister, related to my mother, she was also able to spin both ways. And she used it as a leverage to become 3-time German champion and represent Germany in the Olympics. Quick quiz. Which sports are only allowed to be played right-handed? I'm not going to let you go to lunch before we get it right. Polo. Yes, one. Unbelievable. Come on. No, fencing, you're allowed lefties. There's lefties. And they're southpaws and it can be an advantage. Okay, there's field hockey. They only allow right sticks. They discriminate against left-handers. We've got to do something about that. There is polo, just like you said, brilliantly. And this one is hard. Hot eye. You can tell from their team picture. All right, well, some instruments, for baseball, there's a right-handed made for left-handers. There's a left-handed putter. But when it comes to music, that's different. There's only a right-handed piano. And so if you go to the guitar store in Philadelphia, there's 150 guitars for sale, but only 2 for left-handers. When you call Martin Guitar Company and ask them, how many guitars do you produce that are left-handed, the answer is 5%, even though there's 12% market for it. When you go to the violin store at 17th and Pine, they make cellos there. How many cellos are left-handed? 0. If you go to Philadelphia Orchestra and you look at the violin section, they're all playing right-handed instruments. They may be left-handed, but they're playing right-handed. So in sports, it's an advantage to be left-handed. In music, however, we know Sergio Rachmaninoff, Ludwig van Beethoven, Glenn Gould, all wonderful left-handed musicians. I'm going to show this to you live. Yannick, my favorite director, and of course, if you're left-handed, you still have to put the baton in your right hand. So in music, if you want to be a left-hander and play a right-handed instrument, you probably have to start really early. whereas in sports it's a big advantage. In music, you have to work around it. I want to bring up two performers to show this to you, like visually. Okay? The first one is Dan Nessler, who is a professional soccer player from Germany. Come up, Dan. He's going to be our sports demonstrator. All right, Dan, you got your instrument, the ball.
Yep, of course.
Dan played with First Football Club of Cologne and also was a Drexel University Division I player. He just graduated. We're really proud of you. In finance, it's the right place to come if you're graduating in finance.
Yeah, absolutely.
So you're right-footed.
That's correct, yep.
But you have to use your left foot too.
That's also true, yeah.
So have you ever scored a goal with your left foot?
I've scored goals with my left foot and my right foot, so I can do both, yep.
But the right foot has to be better because you're right-footed.
That's correct, yeah.
How much better do you think it is?
I would say percentage-wise, it's probably like 60-40.
60-40.
Yeah, using my foot, the right foot, 60% of the times during games.
And
yeah.
World Cup starts next week. Who's going to win?
I think, with my unbiased opinion as a German, I think Germany, of course. No, right. I would say Brazil. Brazil is a candidate for the World Cup.
All right, I'm going to take the mic. You're going to juggle the ball, right?
Yep.
Now, before you do this, the stage ends here. Do you have enough room?
It's enough room.
All right. What's the percentage that you're going to hit the piano?
I will take care of the piano.
Okay. All right, we're ready. Here's a demonstration. He's right-footed, but he uses both feet, of course, in soccer. All right, ready? That's great. You're amazing. Well, thank you very much for that demonstration. That's not easy. And now we're going to go to music, where this is a little different. I told you that you have to play a right-handed instrument. We're really lucky to have with us today a superstar in the classical guitar field, Anna Vidovic, Croatian-born Anna. Anna, why don't you come up?
Hello.
It's great to have you here. So we're lucky Saturday morning. I heard that you're going to be touring in Spain to do what?
Yes, I will be playing 3 concerts in Spain, so it's a little tour. Looking forward to in Barcelona, Madrid, and Alicante in Spain.
Yeah, so we're lucky to have you here.
Yeah.
And you play, of course, the guitar with both hands. Are both hands equally as difficult, or is one hand, you prefer one hand or the other?
I think both are equally difficult, yes, because
So
you have to train them to do the same, yes.
All right, so 50-50. So we're going to pay attention to her right hand and pay attention to her left hand. Usually when they do a video of a guitar player, they usually only go to the left hand. Who's going to win the World Cup?
It's a good question. I guess we'll have to wait and see. Maybe Croatia.
There you go. Okay, what are you going to play for us?
I will play Asturias by Isaac Albeniz.
Wonderful, thank you. Thank you so much. Ben Franklin would be proud today because, as you may know, he was an amateur musician, played the harp and the guitar, which was probably a Baroque guitar back then. And he was a good athlete. He was a swimmer. Once it said that he was swimming while flying a kite. I'd like to see you do that while flying a kite. So it was great. Just a little introduction to the mysteries of handedness. It's not as simple as you think. And I understand we can also have a little bit of a Q&A, and we'd be ready to do that.
I'm a militant left-handed person. I have struggled all my life with living in a right-handed world, and I had to learn how to play a guitar right-handed. I do write left-handed. My writing teacher when I was in grade school gave me C's all the time because I couldn't slant my letters properly. She was from the old school where you had to change to work with your right hand. So I found this very helpful. And I would point out that although you only showed Barack Obama's picture, I believe that more American presidents have been left-handed than right-handed. I think this is a correct thing. So I'm really making a comment more than making a question. But on the issue of the dominance of different sides of the brain, how was that discovered?
Yeah, first of all, can I ask you when you started playing the guitar?
When I was in high school.
Yeah. So
I was probably too old, is that what you're saying?
No, not too old, but there's an advantage to starting really early because there's more plasticity in the brain.
Right.
So one thing that's also not available really is also, like for Anna's case, is really good instruction.
Yeah, I never had any instruction,
So the instructor
period.
will be right-handed, so
Yeah.
they're not going to do what's called mirroring. If you've ever been in any yoga class and you're
Right.
doing mirroring and figuring out what is left and right. So all your teachers in Zagreb and then also in Baltimore were right-handed.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. So you started maybe a little bit too late, but not as late as my friend who just started, and he had a right-handed guitar, and he took it to a guitar store to change it. He said, that's expensive. You might as well just learn it right-handed, and he's struggling.
Yeah.
But
when I learned the guitar, I tried to figure out how to play left-handed, and I couldn't do it.
How did they discover it? I mean, Broca was a famous Paris neurologist, and he studied people who had strokes, and there's strokes where people lose a function, but yet the brain is still working. So we found out also that speech is very much lateralized. And it makes sense if you were to, if you're an entrepreneur and you want to build a factory, would you build a factory over in New Jersey and in Pennsylvania? Or would you just build it in Pennsylvania and then ship the goods to New Jersey? So there's also this idea of capacity in the brain, that if everything was in one hemisphere, the other hemisphere wouldn't do anything. So maybe then lateralization would take over there. So there's not enough brain mass for everything that we do, so it makes sense logically to build it like that, actually. But they detected it through illnesses and through gunshot wounds, that there was lateralization of functioning, and they thought for a while that the right hemisphere was asleep, because when there was a gunshot wound to the right hemisphere, it wasn't as easily detectable, but it's not true. Of course, we know it's not easily detectable, but if you look at it carefully, there's lack of creativity and lack of
I'll just make a couple of comments. I've been telling people since I knew this talk was coming today that one thing I learned to do as a child with my right hand was scissors, because it was impossible to cut left-handed with scissors. So now I have a pair of left-handed scissors and a pair of right-handed scissors, and I have to figure out which one it is that I'm trying to use before I can use it. That's the first thing. Second comment is, when I was in college, I took fencing as a sport, and I beat everybody, because nobody except the woman who normally practiced against me knew how to fence against a left-handed person, and she was not very good. I was better than she was, so anyway.
Yeah, thank you.
I'm Jim Moran, a lefty. I've found in my informal sampling at meetings of natural scientists that up to 30% seem to be left-handed. But my question is, I've seen handedness described as a continuum from strong left to strong right. You seem to have another paradigm of transconnection. Yeah. So how are those two ideas connected?
the continuum is very valuable, Jim, and the fact that if you just ask somebody, like in a binary way, 0 or 1, are you left or right-handed? It's not very helpful. So I talked about, rather than the preferred hand, to look at the proficiency of the hand, and so you could measure the proficiency of it. So that would be one. That would be a continuum. I totally agree with you. Handedness is on a continuum, but then there's this other aspect of cross-laterality, which is that maybe I'm 80% right-handed, but I'm left-footed. So all of a sudden I have laterality. And so that gives you a little bit more diversity in neuronal functioning. I think it could go both ways. It could be good, like if you have a nicely wired house electrically, you have a beautiful, beautiful lamps, or it could go haywire. So we see a lot of people who have, dyslexia or some other disabilities also have some of this wiring. But if it works, then you're maybe like a Nadal or Phil Mickelson. So I think this cross-laterality is something that people don't talk much about, but I think might be even more important than handedness. So thank you for that question, Jim. We have one on the balcony, too.
Hi, I'm Ellen Winner from Cambridge. I'm a developmental psychologist and I'm very interested in handedness. And I wondered if you could speak to the fact that there is a connection between non-right-handedness and verbal problems like dyslexia and stuttering on the one hand. And there's also a disproportionate representation of non-right-handers in art school, and I believe in other spatial fields like surgery, carpentry, architecture. And could there be a connection between those two findings such that people go into those spatial fields because they can't do verbal things? Or is there evidence that people who are non-right-hander are actually superior spatially?
Yeah, it's a great question. It's a complex question, but let me take it more top-down. Left-handers that are employed, but left-handers are not as many employed as right-handers, but if they are employed, they make 5% more money than right-handers, both for men and women. So you can tell right away that if a successful left-hander has figured it out, and it didn't kill them, so to speak, they either show up at an APS meeting or they are employed and they do well. There's some idea, of course, that the left hand is connected to the right hemisphere. So there's a function there, right? There's an obvious connection to what we would think as the right hemisphere being more creative, being more, having more patience for abstract problem solving. And I think that's true. And I think that a lot of people who have that connection to some extent can benefit from that. So I think people should embrace that. When there's biological diversity in the classroom, embrace it. Don't make it different, and then give them the same tools. Having said that, to make it even more complicated, the left hemisphere and the right hemisphere, they both have a representation of what the world looks like. It's not like one doesn't, except they may have different tasks in terms of trying to figure out how to solve a problem. So I'm not surprised that Nikola Tesla was a left-hander, that Ben Franklin was a left-hander, that they were working in very abstract fields of electricity, which you really can't see, you have to kind of measure. So I appreciate the question. It's great to have a developmental psychologist here from Cambridge, so thank you for that.
Nili Cohen, Tel Aviv University. I'm lefty. I'm very proud to see all the lefty achievers around us at present and in the past. I didn't have any disadvantage being lefty, but I read that life expectancy of lefties is shorter. Do you have any information about? I cannot complain about this, but in general, do you have any information about it?
Life expectancy is an interesting variable. It's easy to measure because all civilized countries keep it. So I'm interested in countries where people live really, really long, which like Okinawa, Sardinia, Costa Rica, Ikaria, Greece. They don't seem to have a different proportion in left or right hand where they live long. Where people don't live as long, I don't know that answer to it. And on also fighting left-handedness, my mother she was left-handed, of course. She never talked about it. I talk about it. She goes like, whatever, that's on them. I'm going to do what I want to do. And so I don't think it has to be a big obstacle But for some people, has more obstacle than others. I have to look up the terms of the life expectancy for people who are left-handed who don't live long. I know that when you live long, it's proportional. So thank you for that. Yeah.
You've talked about laterality and training, but does proficiency and preference ever change in a lifetime?
There's some plasticity, and it'd be really hard for me to start playing left-handed tennis, and quite frankly, I can't completely relate to Phil Mickelson that he can hit a ball left-handed. I play golf; it would be impossible for me to swing a golf club. So there's something unusual about those individuals they're really cross-lateral. I don't think it ever changes personally. I think you can adapt it like Anna did. She may have to make her left hand perform as well as her right hand, and Dan had to make his left foot perform at least 40% as good as his right foot, you know. But when he takes a penalty kick, he takes it with his right foot for the rest of your life. Yep. Yeah. So I think, again, you know, biology will prevail. That's why it's always hard to fight that. So you would want to embrace it and nurture it rather than, you know, change it.
So, of course, in English and in European languages, we read and write left to right. Mm-hmm. Yeah, left to right. And I remember when our daughter was in Montessori school, they did these pre-reading exercises of arranging objects left to right. Mm-hmm. And of course, other languages are right to left or up to down. And I just wonder whether that has any correlation with handedness or with proficiency in one hand or the other.
Yeah, I would say it does. That's a great question. Even though when you look at true right and left-handers, there's no cross-cultural differences. You know, maybe because biology has expressed itself over the last thousands of years, and certainly anything that we do, it also goes back into our genes, right? So maybe in 10,000 years, you know, countries where they read, you know, right to left will change a little bit more. But they certainly report it differently, like Japan and China. They report 3-4% left-handers. But when you actually measure it and you ask people, it's still 10 to 12%. So maybe they're lagging behind. But that's, of course, a very valid argument. And much of the research I presented today is really also one of the pitfalls is the people who do this research are mostly from the West and from the Western cultures. So we have to really look more at animal research in its habitat and not in captivity, and also look into other areas. So thank you for your attention. I want to also thank one more time Dan and Anna, who took time out of their busy schedules to be with you and perform for you. Thank you for having us. It's been a great morning. I really appreciate it. Thank you very much.